The stranger walked into the Red Hollow general store wearing boots that looked ready to fall apart, a faded brown coat, and a dusty black hat that hid most of his face. Abigail Mercer barely noticed him at first. Men like him passed through the small Wyoming town every week. Cowboys looking for work, drifters searching for warmer country, men with a horse and little else to their name. But then the stranger stopped in front of Abigail, placed a small leather pouch on the counter, and said something that made every person inside the store turn silent. "Marry me." Abigail stared at him. For several seconds, she thought she had heard him wrong. Then the stranger opened the pouch. 3 gold coins rolled onto the wooden counter. Abigail's breath caught. She had spent the entire morning trying to convince Mr. Turner, the store owner, to give her another week to pay what she owed. Her younger brother, Benjamin, had been sick for nearly a month. Dr. Wallace had already warned her that Benjamin needed stronger medicine, better food, and several weeks of rest if he was going to recover. All of those things cost money Abigail did not have. She looked from the gold coins to the stranger. "I don't even know your name." "Everett Hale." His voice was calm. He did not smile. He did not look embarrassed either. Abigail studied him more carefully. He looked around 30. His face was sun-darkened, his jaw rough with several days of beard, and there was a small scar near his left eyebrow. Nothing about him suggested wealth. His coat had been repaired twice near the shoulder. His gloves were worn thin. Even his hat had a tear near the brim. "You're asking a woman you've never met to become your wife." Everett looked directly into her eyes. "I've seen you before." That answer unsettled her more than the proposal. "Where?" "Here at the church, at the doctor's office, at the well." Abigail's expression hardened. "So you've been watching me." "I've been paying attention." Several people nearby leaned closer. Abigail could feel every eye in the store on her. Red Hollow was the kind of town where a broken wagon wheel could become 3 days of conversation. By sunset, every person in town would know that a poor cowboy had walked into Turner's store and offered Abigail Mercer gold to marry him. She lowered her voice. "Why me?" Everett glanced toward the store window. "Because I need someone who knows how to work, someone who doesn't frighten easily, someone who understands that a home doesn't build itself." Abigail almost laughed. "You decided all that by watching me carry flour and medicine." "I decided it when I saw you stand outside Dr. Wallace's office last week." Her face changed. Everett continued quietly. "You were crying." Abigail's cheeks burned. "No, I was." "You were. Then you wiped your face before your brother came outside because you didn't want him to know you were afraid." The store disappeared around her for a moment. Everett's voice became softer. "I know what it looks like when someone has spent too long carrying everything alone." Abigail looked down at the coins. She hated that he had seen her that day. She hated even more that he had understood what he saw. "My brother comes with me," she said. Everett answered immediately. "Yes." "You don't even know Benjamin." "I know he's 17. I know he's sick. I know the doctor says he needs several weeks before he should work again." Abigail's eyes narrowed. "You know too much about my family." "Small town." That answer is getting old. For the first time, something close to amusement appeared in his eyes. "Then ask me something else." Abigail folded her arms. "What do you own?" "A horse." She waited. "And?" "A wagon." She waited again. Everett looked down at himself. Apparently, a very disappointing coat. Someone near the back of the store laughed. Abigail did not. "Land." "Some." "How much?" "Enough." "What does that mean?" "It means you and your brother won't go hungry." That was not an answer, and Abigail knew it. But she also knew something else. 3 gold coins sat on the counter. "Real gold." Enough to pay Dr. Wallace, settle her store debt, buy medicine, and still leave money for food. Abigail had been taking care of Benjamin since their father died in a logging accident 6 years earlier. Their mother had survived only another winter. Since then, Abigail had washed clothes, repaired dresses, cleaned houses, baked bread, and done anything respectable work could provide. She had survived every bad season Red Hollow had given her. But Benjamin's sickness had beaten every careful plan she made. "You could have any woman desperate enough for money," Abigail said. "Why should I believe this isn't some cruel game?" Everett's expression became serious again. "Because you can say no." He pushed the coins toward her. "Take one anyway, pay the doctor." Abigail stared at him. "You would give me gold even if I refuse you." "Yes." "Why?" "Because your brother shouldn't suffer, because I asked you a question." That answer stayed with her. She slowly took one coin. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow." Everett nodded. "I'll be near the north stable at sunrise." He turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. "One more thing, Miss Mercer." Abigail looked at him. "If you come with me, you won't be my servant." Then he stepped outside. The store exploded with voices before the door had even closed. By evening, half of Red Hollow had decided Everett Hale was either a criminal, a madman, or a desperate cowboy who had somehow stolen 3 gold coins. Abigail heard every version. Mrs. Pritchard told her she would be throwing her life away. Mr. Turner warned her that men who appeared from nowhere usually had reasons for hiding their past. Dr. Wallace said almost nothing when Abigail paid him. He only examined the gold coin, then looked at her carefully. "Where did this come from?" "A man named Everett Hale." The doctor paused. Abigail noticed it. "You know him?" "I know the name." "What does that mean?" Dr. Wallace looked toward Benjamin's room. "It means I think you should ask questions before you make decisions." Abigail stepped closer. "What do you know?" But the doctor only shook his head. "Nothing I should repeat without certainty." That night Abigail sat beside Benjamin's bed, while the wind pushed against their small wooden house. Benjamin looked pale, but his fever had finally started to drop. "You're thinking about him," he said. Abigail glanced over. "About who?" "The cowboy." She frowned. "How did you hear?" Benjamin smiled weakly. "We live in Red Hollow. A dog sneezes on Main Street and people hear about it before dinner." Despite everything, Abigail laughed. Then Benjamin became serious. "Are you going?" "I don't know." "You do." She looked at him. Benjamin had always been able to read her. "I'm considering it." "Because of me." "No." "Abigail." She looked away. Benjamin sat higher against his pillow. "You've already given up 6 years because of me." "I didn't give up anything." "Yes, you did." Her eyes flashed. "You are my brother. Taking care of you isn't giving something up." Benjamin swallowed. "What if he's dangerous?" "Then I'll leave." "What if he has nothing?" Abigail looked around the tiny house. Rain slipped through one corner of the roof into a bucket they had placed beneath it. "We don't exactly have much here." Benjamin said nothing. Near midnight, Abigail made her decision. At sunrise, she reached the north stable carrying one small suitcase. Everett was already there. His gray horse stood beside a plain wagon loaded with supplies. When he saw her suitcase, he did not smile. He simply said, "You're coming." "Benjamin comes too." "I know. I work." "Yes." "I make decisions about my own life." "Yes." "And if I discover you lied to me, I leave." Everett paused. Something strange passed across his face. Then he nodded. Fair. Abigail noticed the pause. She remembered it. 2 days later, Everett drove them north into country Abigail had never seen. Benjamin slept beneath blankets in the wagon, while Abigail sat beside Everett. The farther they traveled, the stranger things became. The rough trail slowly turned into a maintained road. New wooden bridges crossed deep streams. Strong fences appeared between the trees. Abigail saw hundreds of cattle in distant meadows. She began counting buildings whenever the forest opened. Barns, worker cabins, storage sheds, a blacksmith shop. None of it made sense. She turned toward Everett. You said you own some land. I do. How much? Everett kept his eyes on the road. Enough. Abigail's suspicion returned. Then late on the second afternoon, the wagon reached the top of a high ridge. Everett stopped the horses. His hands remained around the reins. For the first time since Abigail had met him, the calm cowboy looked nervous. What is it? She asked. Everett looked at her. There's something I should have told you before we left Red Hollow. Abigail's stomach tightened. What? He looked toward the valley beyond the ridge. That I'm not exactly what you think I am. Before Abigail could answer, Everett moved the horses forward. The wagon crossed the ridge. Abigail looked down into the hidden valley. Her breath disappeared. Below them stretched thousands of acres of green pasture surrounded by mountains. Hundreds of cattle moved across the land. Huge barns stood beside long worker houses. A wide road led through rows of tall trees toward the center of the valley. And there, standing above everything else, was a massive stone estate with 2 stories, tall windows, wide porches, and smoke rising from 4 chimneys. It was larger than any home Abigail had ever seen. Men on horseback moved through the fields below. Workers filled the barns. A flag moved above the main house. Abigail slowly turned toward the man beside her. She looked at his torn coat, his cracked boots, his old hat. Then she looked back at the estate. Everett, she whispered, whose place is that? Everett was silent for several seconds. Then he looked directly into her eyes. Mine. Abigail stared at Everett as if the man beside her had suddenly become a stranger again. Yours. Everett nodded. All of it. The house, the valley, the cattle, the barns, the northern timber, and most of the grazing land beyond the western ridge. Abigail looked down at his cracked boots, then at the mansion below, then back at him. You let me believe you were poor. Everett's jaw tightened. I never told you I was poor. You wore a coat with holes in it and told me you owned a horse, a wagon, and some land. All of that was true. Abigail's eyes hardened. It was also designed to make me believe something that wasn't true. Everett did not defend himself. That surprised her. He simply lowered his gaze for a moment and said, yes. Benjamin had awakened in the wagon behind them. He pushed himself upright beneath the blankets and stared into the valley. Good Lord. Abigail barely heard him. Why? Everett looked toward the estate. My father built this place. When he died, everything became mine. After that, every woman I met seemed interested in the same things. The land, the money, the house, the name. He paused. I wanted someone who would choose the man before she saw the estate. Abigail felt anger rise in her chest. So I was a test. No, that is exactly what I was. Everett turned toward her. I was afraid. The answer stopped her. Not because it excused him. It did not. But because she had not expected a man like Everett Hale to admit fear. I spent 4 years watching people become different the moment they learned what I owned, he said. I started wondering if anyone would ever look at me without calculating what came with me. Abigail held his gaze. You should have trusted me with the truth. I know. You don't get to decide whether I am honest by being dishonest first. I know. She looked toward the estate again. The anger was still there, but beneath it something more complicated had begun forming. Everett had paid Benjamin's doctor bill before she had agreed to marry him. He had accepted every condition she gave him. He had never treated Benjamin like a burden. Those things were still true. But so was the deception. Take us down, Abigail finally said. Everett looked at her. That doesn't mean I forgive you. I understand. I want to see everything. You will. And if there are any more surprises, Everett Hale, I swear I will turn around and walk back to Red Hollow myself. Benjamin leaned forward weakly from behind them. That would be a very long walk. Abigail looked back at him. Benjamin tried to hide his grin. Even Everett almost smiled. The wagon started down the ridge. The closer they came to the estate, the larger it became. Men stopped working when they saw Everett. Some lifted their hats. Others called greetings. Not one of them treated him like an ordinary cowboy. The first man to reach the wagon was tall, broad-shouldered, and gray-haired, with a weathered face and powerful hands. Mr. Hale. Abigail noticed the respect immediately. Everett climbed down. Frank. The older man looked toward Abigail and Benjamin. His expression changed. You brought them. I did. Everett turned. Abigail, this is Franklin Ross. He manages most of the ranch when I'm away. Frank removed his hat. Mrs. Hale. Abigail still had not grown used to hearing that name attached to hers. Mr. Ross. Frank is fine. His eyes moved toward Benjamin. Everett explained quietly, he's recovering from illness. Frank's entire manner became practical. I'll have Margaret prepare the east bedroom, warmest room in the house. You don't need to, Abigail began. Frank had already turned toward a ranch hand. Tell Margaret we have company and bring the boys' things inside. Benjamin whispered from the wagon, I think he outranks you here. Everett looked at him. Most people think they do. Benjamin smiled. Abigail tried not to. Inside, the mansion was nothing like she expected. She had imagined polished rooms no one used and expensive objects sitting everywhere simply because someone could afford them. Instead, she found a working home. Boot marks crossed the wooden floor. Account books filled shelves beside novels. Maps covered one wall of Everett's study. The kitchen smelled of bread, coffee, and roasting meat. A large fireplace dominated the main room because the winters in the valley demanded it. Everything was fine quality, but little seemed chosen merely to impress. A woman named Margaret Ross, Frank's wife, appeared from the kitchen. She was short, strong, and perhaps 50, with gray beginning to show in her dark hair. She took one look at Benjamin. Upstairs. Benjamin opened his mouth. Margaret pointed toward the stairs. You can argue after you've eaten. Benjamin looked at Abigail. I like her. I heard that, Margaret said. Then I meant it. Margaret's mouth twitched. Within 20 minutes, Benjamin was in a warm bed with soup, clean blankets, and more attention than Abigail had been able to afford him in months. That alone weakened something in her anger. Not enough to remove it, but enough to make room for something else. That evening, Everett showed Abigail the estate. There were 26 full-time workers, 3 large barns, 2 bunkhouses, a smithy, a smokehouse, winter storage buildings. Nearly 900 cattle. More horses than Abigail could count without writing the number down. "You own all of this," she said. "I'm responsible for all of it." The difference in wording did not escape her. They entered his study. Ledgers covered one shelf. Abigail walked toward them immediately. "What are those?" "Accounts. I want to see them." Everett blinked. "The ranch accounts." "Yes." He studied her. "You arrived 3 hours ago. And you told me this marriage was a partnership." "I did. So show me what I married into." Something shifted in Everett's expression. Then he pulled several books from the shelf and placed them on the desk. They spent the next hour going through numbers. Abigail expected extravagance. She found discipline. The ranch made considerable money, but Everett spent heavily on maintenance, winter grain, medical supplies, fair wages, and repairs. One group of payments caught her attention. "What are these?" Everett glanced down. "Support agreements." "For whom?" "Families whose land my father purchased years ago. Some of them sold because they had no choice. My father promised them yearly payments after the sale." "And you still pay them?" "Yes." "Why?" Everett looked confused by the question. "Because he promised." "He promised, not you." "My name is on the land he bought." Everett closed the ledger. "So my name is on the promise too." Abigail stared at him. That answer did more to change her opinion than the mansion, the cattle, or the gold ever could. The following morning she woke before sunrise. The ranch was already alive. Men crossed the yard carrying tack. Horses moved through the cold dawn. Frank shouted instructions near the west barn. Abigail found Margaret in the kitchen. "Can I help?" Margaret studied her, then handed her a bowl. "Biscuits." They worked together quietly. After several minutes, Margaret said, "He was wrong not to tell you." Abigail looked up. "Everett." "I know who you mean." Margaret continued mixing dough. "He thought hiding this place would protect him." "From what?" "Being wanted for it." Abigail said nothing. "There was someone before," Margaret continued. "A woman?" Margaret nodded. Vanessa Reed came from Cheyenne. Beautiful, educated, knew exactly how to behave in every room she entered. "What happened?" "She loved the estate." Margaret looked directly at Abigail. "She just didn't love the man who came with it." Abigail's hand slowed. "She wanted him to sell. Most of it move east, live in a city. She called this valley lonely." Margaret looked toward the window. Everett heard trapped. Abigail understood more than she wanted to. Later that morning, she found Everett beside a pasture fence, watching a young horse being trained. "You could have told me about Vanessa." Everett sighed. "Margaret." "She thinks fear explains you." "It does." "It doesn't excuse you." "I know." Abigail stood beside him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she looked across the ranch. "I want work." Everett turned. "You don't have to work." "That is not what I said." He corrected himself immediately. "All right. I can sew, I can keep accounts, I can organize supplies, I can manage people if they don't annoy me too much." Everett almost smiled. "That final skill may be important." "I'm serious." "So am I." He leaned against the fence. "What do you want?" Abigail thought. "A room with good light, a proper table, and access to the household accounts." "You want the accounts too." "I told you I wasn't coming here to become furniture." Everett smiled fully this time. "All right." She looked at him sharply. What? Nothing. You're smiling. I'm allowed. Not while I'm still angry. That only made the smile worse. For the first time, Abigail almost laughed with him. Then a rider appeared on the southern road. The man came quickly. Frank saw him first. The older rancher's entire posture changed. Everett's smile disappeared. Who is that? Abigail asked. Everett stepped away from the fence. Trouble. The rider entered the yard wearing a dark coat, polished boots, and the confidence of a man who believed every door should open for him. He was perhaps 50. He dismounted without waiting for help. His eyes immediately found Everett. Then Abigail. Well, he said, the rumors were true. Everett's voice turned cold. Silas Crowley. Silas smiled. Everett Hale finally found himself a wife. His gaze moved over Abigail carefully. Unexpected. Abigail disliked him immediately. Silas reached inside his coat and removed a folded paper. I came to give you one final opportunity. Everett did not take it. What opportunity? To settle before this becomes expensive. Frank had come closer. The ranch hands nearby had stopped working. Silas opened the document. The south pasture boundary is wrong. Everett's expression did not change. It has stood for 32 years. Then it has been wrong for 32 years. What do you want? Silas smiled. 200 acres. Frank swore under his breath. Silas continued. And the water rights running through Crow Creek. Abigail saw the reaction around her. That water mattered. A great deal. Everett's voice dropped. No. Silas folded the paper again. You should read the claim before answering. I know what you're doing. Do you? Silas leaned closer. I have a survey, witness records, legal statements, enough to make a territorial judge listen. Everett's hands remained still at his sides. You're not getting the land. Silas put the document back inside his coat. Then I suppose we'll let Helena decide. He mounted his horse. Before leaving, he looked at Abigail. My condolences, Mrs. Hale. For what? Silas smiled. You married a man who may soon own considerably less than you were promised. Abigail stepped forward. I married him when I thought he owned one horse and a bad coat. Silas's smile faded slightly. Abigail held his gaze. So if you came here expecting me to panic over acreage, you wasted the ride. Silence filled the yard. Frank looked down to hide what was clearly a smile. Silas stared at Abigail for several seconds. Then he touched his hat. We'll meet again. He rode south. Everett watched him disappear. Then he turned toward Abigail. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Why? Abigail looked toward the south pasture. Because I don't like him. That's your reason. It's enough for today. She looked back at Everett. You said partnership. Everett nodded slowly. I did. Then stop standing there and show me the documents. He stared at her. Abigail, if that man wants your land, I want to know why. If he has evidence, I want to see it. If he's lying, I want to know where the lie starts. For several seconds, Everett said nothing. Then something changed in his eyes. Not surprise. Respect. Come with me. They went into the study. Everett unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. He removed an old leather folder filled with surveys, contracts, maps, and handwritten agreements. Abigail sat across from him. He spread them across the desk. This began before my father died. How long? Nearly 15 years. Why? Everett looked down at the oldest document. Because Silas Crowley believes my father stole this valley from his family. Abigail went still. Did he? Everett looked directly at her. I don't know. That answer frightened her more than if he had simply said no. Outside the study window, the ranch continued working as though nothing had changed. But Abigail knew better. Something had changed. The secret estate was no longer the biggest surprise Everett Hale had been hiding. And whatever waited inside those old papers might decide whether the life Abigail had just entered would survive long enough to become hers. Abigail spent the next 3 hours reading papers that had been sitting inside Everett Hale's desk long before she ever knew his name. By the time the evening lamps were lit, she understood why Silas Crowley wanted the south pasture so badly. It was not simply 200 acres of grass. Crow Creek crossed that land before flowing north through the rest of Everett's ranch. Whoever controlled the south pasture could control the water during a dry summer, and without that water, hundreds of cattle could not survive. This isn't about land, Abigail said. Everett sat across from her. No. He wants the ranch. Everett nodded. Piece by piece. Abigail looked at the old agreement again. Everett's father, Nathan Hale, had purchased the south pasture 32 years earlier from a rancher named Walter Briggs. The agreement listed the boundary clearly. There were signatures from Nathan, Walter, and 2 witnesses. But Silas had another document. A newer survey claimed the boundary had been marked incorrectly. According to it, nearly 200 acres actually belonged to Crowley land. Abigail tapped the paper. Who made this survey? Duncan Price. Who is he? A surveyor Silas uses. That already makes me suspicious. Everett leaned back. It should. Abigail looked at the witness statement attached to the survey. The name caught her attention. Martin Briggs. Everett nodded. Walter Briggs's son. He says his father told him the original boundary was wrong. Yes. Is Martin alive? Everett hesitated. He died last winter. Abigail slowly lowered the document. So Silas's strongest witness is dead. Yes. And the original seller is dead. Yes. And your father is dead. Yes. Abigail's eyes narrowed. How convenient. Everett watched her. What are you thinking? That dead men are very useful when someone wants to tell a story they can't challenge. Everett went still. Abigail began arranging the papers by date. When was Martin's statement signed? 8 months before he died. Who witnessed it? Everett leaned forward. A man named Duncan Price. The same surveyor. Yes. Abigail looked up. That is where we start. The next morning she told Benjamin everything. He was stronger now, and already spending most of his days following Frank around the barns. When Abigail finished explaining the dispute, Benjamin frowned. You think the statement is false? I think something about it is wrong. Benjamin thought quietly. What about Martin Briggs's family? Abigail looked at him. What about them? If he had a wife or children, maybe he told them what happened. Abigail stared at her younger brother. Then she smiled. Frank is teaching you too much. Benjamin grinned. Frank says I'm finally becoming useful. From the other side of the barn, Frank called. I said almost useful. Benjamin shouted back, that still counts. Within an hour, Everett had learned that Martin Briggs's widow, Rose, lived in a small town called Pine Crossing, a full day south. They left before noon. The ride gave Abigail time to think. Everett drove while she studied Silas's documents again. After several hours, Everett said, "You haven't stopped reading." "I'm trying to understand the mistake." "What mistake?" "Silas made one." "You sound certain." "Everyone makes one when they build something out of lies." Everett glanced at her. "And if he isn't lying?" Abigail looked toward him. "Then we deal with the truth." The answer seemed to matter to him. He looked back at the road. That evening they reached Pine Crossing. Rose Briggs lived in a small white house beside an abandoned mill. She was a tired-looking woman in her late 40s, with brown hair tied tightly behind her head and hands marked by years of work. When Everett introduced himself, Rose's expression hardened. "Hale?" "Yes, ma'am. My husband spent half his life talking about your land." Abigail immediately understood this would not be easy. Rose let them inside, but she did not offer coffee. Everett explained the legal claim. Then Abigail placed Martin's signed statement on the table. Rose read it. Her face changed. Not surprise. Anger. "Where did you get this?" "Silas Crowley," Abigail said. Rose looked at the signature. "That's Martin's name." Everett's expression darkened. Then Rose added, "But he didn't write this." Abigail leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "My husband could sign his name. He could barely write anything else. Martin left school when he was 9. She pointed at several handwritten words beneath the signature. "This says he personally reviewed the old survey records. Martin couldn't have written a sentence like that if you gave him all afternoon." Everett and Abigail looked at each other. "Did Silas Crowley visit him?" Abigail asked. Rose's jaw tightened. 3 times. "When?" "During Martin's final year." "Why?" "Silas said he was trying to correct an old wrong." Rose sat down. "Martin hated Nathan Hale." Everett's face remained calm. "Why?" "Because Martin believed his father sold that land too cheaply. Walter Briggs never complained about it, but Martin spent years blaming the Hales for everything that went wrong afterward." Rose looked at Everett. "He would have helped Silas hurt your family if he could." Abigail asked carefully, "Would he have lied?" Rose was silent. Then she said, "Maybe." That was not what Abigail hoped to hear. "But he didn't write this statement," Rose continued. "I know that." "Would you testify?" Rose looked immediately uncomfortable. "I don't want trouble with Silas Crowley." Abigail understood. Silas was wealthy, powerful. Rose lived alone. So Abigail did not pressure her. Instead, she folded the document. "Then don't decide today." Rose looked at her. Abigail stood. "But if Silas used your husband's anger after his death to put words in his mouth, ask yourself whether staying silent protects Martin or lets another man use him." They left. Everett said nothing until they were halfway back to the wagon. Then he looked at Abigail. "You knew pushing her would make her refuse." "Yes." "How?" "Because scared people defend the first safe answer they find." "You've thought about that before." Abigail looked toward the road. "I've been scared before." They returned to the estate the following evening. Frank was waiting, and this time his face told them the trouble had grown. Crowley filed. Everett stopped. "Went." "This morning." "Where?" "Laramie." The territorial court moved the dispute there because the Southern District judge has authority over both properties. Frank handed him a folded notice. "The hearing is in 3 weeks." Abigail took the paper. 3 weeks. Silas had moved faster than expected. Everett looked at her. "We need a lawyer." "No," Abigail said. Frank raised an eyebrow. Everett frowned. "No." We need a lawyer and the original government survey. Silence. Abigail held up Nathan Hale's old agreement. This refers to a territorial survey filed when your father bought the land. Silas has a new survey. We need the old one. Everett's expression changed. The records office in Laramie. Yes. They had a courthouse fire 12 years ago. Did everything burn? I don't know. Then we find out. They left for Laramie 2 mornings later. Benjamin wanted to come. Abigail refused. You're staying here. I can help. You can help by getting strong. Benjamin looked toward Everett. Everett immediately said, Don't look at me. I've learned better than to argue with her. Frank laughed. Even Abigail smiled. Before they left, Benjamin caught Everett near the wagon. Abigail heard him say quietly, Bring her back. Everett looked at him. We bring each other back. Benjamin nodded. The same answer again. The same promise. On the second evening of the journey, they camped near a narrow stream. Abigail sat beside the fire studying the case. Everett watched her for a long time. Then he said, Why are you fighting this hard? She looked up. This affects me too. You've been here less than 2 months. That doesn't answer your question. No. Abigail closed the folder. For a moment, she looked into the fire. When I first came here, I thought I was marrying a poor cowboy because my brother needed medicine. Everett said nothing. Then I saw the estate and thought you had made a fool of me. His jaw tightened. I know. But then I saw the books. She looked at him. I saw how you pay your workers. I saw your father's promises still being honored. I saw Benjamin become healthy again. I saw Frank teach him like he mattered. I saw Margaret give him food until he finally stopped looking sick. Her voice softened. This place is more than land. Everett's eyes did not leave hers. And you are more than the man who lied to me on a ridge. I never. Do not start that argument again. He stopped. Then he smiled. Abigail did too. The smile faded slowly. I'm fighting because Silas wants to take something good by using something false, she said. I know what it costs to build a life. I won't watch someone steal one. Everett looked at her for several seconds. Then quietly he said, I love you. Abigail went still. The fire cracked between them. Everett did not move closer. He did not ask anything. He simply let the words exist. Abigail looked down. You chose a terrible time to say that. I know. We are preparing for court. I know. I'm still deciding what kind of husband you are. I know. She looked up. But you're doing better. Everett smiled. I'll take that. The next morning they reached Laramie. The records office was smaller than Abigail expected. A young clerk led them into a back archive after Everett explained what they needed. For nearly 2 hours they searched. Nothing. Then the clerk found a box marked with Nathan Hale's district number. Inside were old survey notes. Abigail's hands trembled as she opened them. She found the south boundary. Read the measurements. Then read them again. Everett stood beside her. Well, Abigail looked at him. Your father was right. The original government survey matched Nathan Hale's agreement exactly. Silas Crowley's new survey was wrong. They made certified copies. Then they hired attorney Daniel Mercer, a sharp, quiet man known for land cases. When he saw the original survey, his first words were simple. Crowley has a problem. The hearing came 3 weeks later. The courtroom was crowded. Silas sat beside his lawyer, wearing the same confident expression he had worn in Everett's yard. Rose Briggs was nowhere in sight. Abigail tried not to feel disappointed. Silas's lawyer attacked the old survey. He argued that early territorial measurements were unreliable. Then he produced Martin Briggs's statement. Daniel Mercer challenged it immediately. He pointed out that the wording appeared more educated than Martin's known writing. But without Rose, it was only suspicion. Then the courtroom doors opened. Everyone turned. Rose Briggs walked inside. Abigail felt her breath catch. Rose stepped forward. "I need to speak." Silas's face changed. For the first time, Abigail saw fear. Rose testified that Martin could barely write. She testified that Silas visited him 3 times. She testified that Martin hated the Hales enough to complain about them, but that he had never claimed to have personally studied the original government survey. Then Daniel Mercer asked the final question. "Mrs. Briggs, did your husband write the statement Mr. Crowley submitted to this court?" Rose looked toward Silas. "No." The courtroom went silent. The judge examined the original government survey. Then Silas's newer survey. Then Martin's questionable statement. His ruling came before sunset. The original boundary would remain. Everett Hale kept the south pasture. The water rights remained with the Hale estate. And the court ordered an investigation into how Martin Briggs's statement had been produced. Silas Crowley left without looking at them. Outside the courthouse, Everett stood on the steps as if he had forgotten how to move. Abigail came beside him. "It's over. For now." She looked at him. "You're learning from me. That should worry me." "It should." He laughed. Then he looked at her seriously. "Abigail." She knew what he was about to say. This time she did not stop him. "I love you," Everett said. Abigail looked at the man she had first known as a poor cowboy with broken boots. Then she remembered the man who had paid for Benjamin's medicine before she agreed to anything. The man who had made mistakes. The man who had admitted them. The man who honored promises made before she ever knew him. The man who had slowly learned to trust her with everything. "I know," she said. Everett waited. Abigail smiled. "And I love you too." He stared at her. For once, Everett Hale had no answer. Abigail laughed. Then he pulled her carefully into his arms. When they returned to the estate, Benjamin was waiting at the gate with Frank. The moment he saw Abigail smiling, he knew. "You won." "We won," she said. Benjamin ran toward her. He looked stronger than he had in years. Abigail hugged him tightly. Over his shoulder, she saw Everett standing beside Frank. Frank said something quietly to him. Everett smiled. That evening, the estate gathered for supper. Workers filled the long tables. Margaret made enough food for twice the number of people present. Benjamin told the story of the court hearing, as though he had personally fought the case. Frank corrected every third detail. For the first time in years, Abigail sat at a table without calculating what the food had cost. Later, when everyone had gone, Everett took her upstairs. He opened a door at the eastern end of the house. Morning moonlight fell through 3 large windows. A wide table stood in the center. Shelves lined one wall. Abigail stepped inside. "What is this?" "Your sewing room." She turned. Everett leaned against the door. "You said you wanted work." Abigail touched the table. "You remembered." "I remember most things you tell me." She looked around. "This was your father's room, wasn't it?" Everett nodded. "He kept his maps here." "And you're giving it to me." "No." She looked at him sharply. Everett smiled. "It's already yours." Abigail walked to the window. Below her, the hidden valley stretched beneath the moon. The barns, the pastures, the creek, the house she once believed belonged to a stranger. She thought of Red Hollow and the leaking roof. She thought of the store counter and 3 gold coins. She thought of how certain everyone had been that she was ruining her life by marrying a poor cowboy. They had been wrong about Everett. But Abigail understood something even more important now. She had been wrong too. His greatest secret had never been that he was rich. It was that beneath the worn coat, behind the quiet voice, and beyond the hidden estate was a man who had spent years building a life large enough to share, but had been too afraid to believe anyone would want him without it. Abigail had chosen him when she thought he had almost nothing. And in the end, Everett learned that she stayed after discovering everything. Not because of his cattle. Not because of his land. Not because of the stone house or gold coins. She stayed because somewhere between a desperate marriage bargain, a hidden valley, a fight for stolen land, and countless quiet mornings beside him, the poor cowboy she thought she had married became the man she finally chose with a free heart. And for the first time in either of their lives, neither of them had to carry everything alone.